So for your February Denver housing market update for 2025, there's not a ton that was surprising, but a few things that were like, holy crap, that's interesting. And it's definitely going to make things a little different this spring than I typically see. So when I talk about the spring market in Denver, I'm usually referring to February, March, April, May, kind of that early real estate season, even though we still have snow on the ground and things like that. So, getting into the data as a caveat, this is for the 7 county Denver metro, as I always say. Our median price point for residential homes, this includes single family, attached, detached, all of those. So, single family, condos, townhomes, duplexes, everything like that. Our median price point was $100 less. Not a big surprise. We usually kind of bottom out in December, January anyway, right? Because January closings are December shoppers. So a lot of times our prices actually bottom out in January. It just kind of depends on the year. But average price went down a little bit. Like I said, doesn't surprise me a whole lot, just given seasonality of things. That's not unusual either. But our average price for residential property in the Denver metro area is $668.95 for those properties that closed in January. And as I said, those are December shoppers. So that still puts us back when you want to talk about spring. That's still a little bit pretty close to February of last year. Like we're doing okay. Like we're still slowly going up. It's not 19 or 2020, 2021 going up, which we all know is not sustainable and is not healthy and all those terrible things that came from that, unless you own property and you have great equity. Anyway, not going to go down in the weeds on that. However, we had so many new listings and we had buyers too, and I'll go into each of that, but we don't have enough buyers to soak up all this new inventory. So we did have inventory sitting around last year. Let me actually back up a little bit and go to months of supply. We had more months of supply in the Denver metro housing market last year, and especially into last fall, than we have had in about 12 years. So, and I'll show you that back to about 2012, 2013. It would help if I can click the right button while I'm talking here. So we had over 3 months of inventory, which is the most that we've had for our residential housing market since fall of 2012. Okay. That's a long time. And I was talking about that last fall, and I got super excited about all of the pendings that we had in September. And this was why. So we had this huge drop off a cliff in prices in September closings because July or August shoppers. And then we had this huge pickup of pendings in September, and that's why our activity kind of came back. So you can see overall our prices are still going up, but our months of supply and our inventory was the highest last fall that we've had for a very long time. Days in MLS, houses were sitting around a lot longer and are still sitting around. So your house will likely not sell in a weekend. Okay. I hope we have set that realistic expectation for people now that is no longer down here in 2020 and 2021 and 2022. Okay. That was the expectation for a few years that is not realistic nowadays for most people. And that's the median days on market. Average days on market was almost 2 months for residential property. But I wanted to show you that so you can see how much inventory I had last fall, how long properties were sitting around. So there's a lot of sellers that have been on the fence, right? For the golden handcuffs reasons of rates being really low that we've talked about many times, for, hey, it's more affordable for me to stay in my house than it is to move and buy something else. For a lot of people, it really should be downsizing or moving or, changing their life situation. So their house should change with them, but they feel like they've been stuck. So sellers have been stuck too, not just buyers, which even though we had some inventory sitting around, the sellers have decided to get unstuck. Oh, this is way too busy. Let me zoom in for you. So I'm even going to go 3 years. 5 is fine. So the sellers decided to get unstuck. And yes, we typically have new inventory in January. A lot of people are waiting until after between election years and holidays. When those all land in the same Q4, realtors just expect the world to stop. Like our business gets very, very slow. And that was definitely the case last fall as well. I still had some things going on, but not nearly as much as a lot of other falls and a lot of other Q4s, because when those two things collide, everybody sits on their hands, right? So it's not unusual for people to wait till January, but this was a lot, guys. We had 1,800 new homes listed, residential new homes listed in the 7-county Denver metro area in December, which is about on par for, 1,600 December before, 1,700 December before. more stuff before that. So it's been really slow the last couple of Q4s. However, we had 4,200 new residential listings in January of 2025. Yes, things pick up, but not 4,200. We had 3,200 last January, 2,700 the January before, 3,300 January of 22 when rates were in the threes. We had almost 4,000 in January of 21 when rates were in the threes. 2020 in COVID, we even had 4,400. So January of 2020, before COVID really hit, was the last time we had this many new homes listed in a January. We certainly do not have the buyer demand that we did when rates were in the threes. And here's what shows that. I'll show showing activity here in a minute, but here's pendings. So pendings picked up. More buyers got out there and got things under contract now that it's new year. And hey, we're past the holidays, we're past the election. Inauguration was a whole different issue. And I know a lot of people are still struggling with that, understandably so. But so we did have some activity out there, but not quite the activity pickup difference between December to January that we usually have. We also don't usually have that many new listings in the same month. So our months of supply actually went up a little early because normally the buyers get started before the sellers get going for January. And then things start to turn a little bit in February. And then in February is typically when our months of supply goes up because our inventory goes up. Now, a lot of that inventory gets sucked up pretty quickly. So I was very interested to see that we already had a slight, noted it's slight, but we already had a slight increase of months of supply. So essentially, hey, more homes coming on than things going under contract. I think that is going to show very much in the data for next month. I think the days on market still not going to go down very much. I think it's just going to kind of level off from February to March, which is not normally the case. Normally that's when things take off and kind of get off and running. So I'm really curious to see how that goes. Now, closed listings, we did have more January of 25 than we did the previous couple of Januaries, which is nice. And those are because of those December shoppers that got out there. So anyway, showings for those that are thinking about selling their house, we do have, I'm going to go shows per listing. So we have about a 50% pickup in showing activity, but that's still 6 showings roughly per month. Shows depending, so how many people have to see your house to get under contract statistically is 13, which makes sense why our days on market is about 2 months, right? That all lines up. It takes 2 months to get about 6 to get 13 or so showings, which gets us under contract. So overall, I think the difference in new listings was probably the biggest takeaway for me. And I'm still seeing that hesitation in the buyer activity in the market, but I am seeing much more willingness for the sellers to say, hey, it's spring, let's do something. I think the buyers are back. Cool, they're back. Your house still likely will not sell in the first weekend. Okay, it may. If so, that's wonderful. But with our days on market being about 2 months, plan for that. I think that will go down a little bit, and I think things will start to pick up. But if there's still more sellers than there are buyers, who gets that leverage, right? The buyers are still going to get that leverage. So I think the buyers are still going to be able to negotiate more on the price. I do still expect to see more price reductions than I typically would see in February, especially when all these new listings that came on from January, and you can see the active listings also went up, which they usually go up, but not till February. Just sellers got started a little earlier than buyers did this year. So we'll see when that levels out and how that affects things. But that does mean buyers that are out shopping right now are going to have more leverage right now than they typically would have this time of year. And they're also going to have more choices. So they're going to be the first ones in the grocery store right after the shelves are restocked, and people haven't even gotten in the parking lot yet. So that's where you can use that to your advantage. The other thing that is not on this data set, but I did want to talk about, is I heard from my title rep yesterday that they ran their numbers and they are 35% back on market. So as far as 35% of the title orders that they're receiving are falling through and those houses are going back on the market. That is huge. 1 in 3 properties that is going under contract. So 1 in 3 of these pending listings for January has fallen through and come back on the market. Normally 15%, 20%. We did see things get a little higher in the last year or two, 20, especially with the rate volatility and, oh, I think they're going to go down, but they didn't. Now I can't afford it. And more layoffs and things happening last year than it happened in a while. So we did see that go 20, 25%, even up to 30. It's the first time I've ever heard 35%. So what that also means is buyers, if the house you do love or you did love went under contract, and you're like, oh man, I missed it. I'm calling, guys. Hey, if something happens, call us. Backup offers are a great option when you have that kind of a back on market rate. It means you got a 35% chance of that place coming back on and being available, okay? So that also affects available inventory significantly as well. And it also affects kind of the buyer sentiment and shows me that they're still feeling really uneasy. So anyway, those are my big takeaways for the market right now. If you're planning to buy or sell or thinking about it and want to talk strategy, want to talk game plan, please feel free to reach out to me. I've got appointment time slots. You can pick one right off my calendar right down below. I want to make it easy for us to chat and get a game plan together, or even just do a quick call. I do have that option as well. If you got something out of this, you're like, man, that's a good idea. Please hit the like button. That'll help other people find it as well, or leave a comment down below on something that you thought was interesting. I am curious to see with this extra inventory, if the buyer demand doesn't quite keep up and all these sellers are like, hey, yeah, let's go. Will that affect our pricing? Will we finally have some adjustment there, some market normalization and market adjustment in our pricing? And is it enough for the buyers to say, hey, let's go do this now that our rates are really in the low sixes, high fives? I'm not a lender, but at the lender updates I'm getting, FHA rates are 6. Guys, like, I don't think buyers realize that. So there's also some credit unions that are doing dedicated first-time home buyer rates for well-qualified conventional buyers, lower down payment, but to help on the rate piece, if they want to go conventional instead of FHA, they have a cheaper conventional rate. But FHA rates are a great option too, and it saves you a lot of money. So anyway, hit me up down below if you have questions. Pick a time off my calendar if you want to talk strategy. And thanks so much for the time, and y'all have a great day.